In this episode, I'm going solo as I speak with Debi Silber PHD, the founder of the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, which helps people heal after betrayal so they can regain trust in themselves and establish the security needed to regain control of their life. Debi is also a holistic psychologist, a health, mindset and personal development expert, and a two-time #1 international best-selling author of The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Healed. This is such a wonderful, enlightening and positive conversation, and I know you're going to find it as insightful as I did.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, Claire. And I am flying solo today. Unfortunately, James has been called off to do other things, but I was just saying I'm secretly quite excited about going solo on this because I've got an amazing woman for you today. We're going to be talking all things betrayal. And I met this lovely lady when we were over in the US. I know lots of people have been saying how amazing our little mini tour around the US was. And this lady is someone that I felt a real deep connection with. So I'm kind of glad that we can have this one-to-one chat with each other. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the amazing Dr. Debi Silber, PhD. She is the founder of the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute. She is a holistic psychologist, a health, mindset, and personal development expert, and an international best-selling author. Debi, hello, welcome.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
So am I. It's so wonderful to have you here. So let's dive straight on in, shall we, Debi? Like, what inspired you to start the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute? What was the kind of thinking behind it and the feeling, should I say, behind it?
Right. Well, you can imagine no one studies betrayal unless you have to. It's not like, oh, I want to study betrayal. No. So I've been in business over 30 years, health, mindset, personal development. And then I had a really painful betrayal from my family, thought I did everything I needed to do to heal from that. It happened a few years later. This time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through it, it's devastating. It's so traumatic. So that was the deal breaker. Got him out of the house, looked at the two experiences thinking, well, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, what else? And I realized boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my own needs seriously. And I'm one of those people that believes if nothing changes, nothing changes. So here it was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business, and I enrolled in a PhD program. Claire, I didn't even know how I was going to pay for it. I didn't know how I was going to manage the time. I just felt so pulled and so called. Well, it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. Honestly, I was only trying to heal. That was my only intention. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive? That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life. So to answer your question, and I would love to share the discoveries, I founded the PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, because you can't go making discoveries like this and then go back to what you were doing. Here was the roadmap to heal from all of it. So it was something I felt so compelled, just so compelled to share with the world.
And I think that's so true, isn't it? It's through our own experiences that we are pulled to go in different directions. I know that throughout my second divorce, when I was put on antidepressants and I had myself a whole heap of drama, I was treating my body without any respect. And it was through me finding my way through nutrition and exercise and all that. It was a no-brainer for me. It was kind of like, I've got to do this. It's like a calling that I feel like God had placed in me through this terrible obstacle, through this terrible thing. There was an opportunity to become more of who I was meant to be. So I think, hearing that story from you, it's a common thing, isn't it? And I'd love you to share some of the stuff that came out of that research that you did. Do share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had a feeling that betrayal was a different type of trauma. I'd been through death of a loved one, I'd been through disease, but I didn't want to assume it was the same for all my study participants. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. Here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the entire self gets shattered. Think about it. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Like when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. Life will never be the same. You don't necessarily question the whole relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. So that type of healing, where you not only rebuild your life, you rebuild yourself, it needed its own name. So I coined a new term, Post Betrayal Transformation, the complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. So that betrayal is a different type of trauma. That was the first discovery.
So true. Really resonates with me. Amazing.
Want me to get to the second one?
Yeah. Do it.
All right. So the second one was, there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. Now, we've had over 95,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. A few things about that. The first thing is, we've all been taught time heals all wounds. I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can still feel the hate. My betrayal happened 10 years ago. It feels like it happened yesterday. So we know you cannot count on time. You cannot count on a new relationship to heal it. Healing is deliberate and intentional. And until and unless you deliberately and intentionally heal it, it will follow you around in your work, in your health, in your relationships. And I'm happy to share how that's done. But if every so often I pull the stats from the quiz to see where people land. You want me to share some?
Yes, please. Oh, I love stats.
Okay, good, because that would be really awkward if you said no. Okay, so now
no, please don't, Debbie. No, I would love you. We geek out on stats, so go ahead.
Oh, you are going to love this then. So now imagine men and women, just about every country's represented, 95,000 plus people. Listen to these numbers too. 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. Think about how exhausting that is. 94% deal with painful triggers. And if you've had a trigger, you know how painful they can be. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. So you sleep all night, you wake up, you're exhausted, your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're emotionally eating, you're using food for comfort. 45%, I see you shaking your head. 45%.
I don't.
Yep, have a digest. Yeah, 45% have a digestive issue. And that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 70% walking around in a state of disbelief, 68% can't focus, 64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. Let's just stop there for a minute. You can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work, you still have to raise your kids. That's not even the emotional issues. Ready? Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. Now you can bounce back and forth between those two all day long. Think about what that's going to do to you. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. Just a few more. Here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. That one killed me. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Sobering stats there, isn't it? It's really, and it resonates so much with my life experiences. And I was saying secretly, I'm glad that James isn't here because I can just have a girly chat with you. But I know from his own experiences, he will really resonate with that as well. And I think from the physical aspects of what you're talking about there, that really fascinates me because the mind-body connection. And I always say, like, the body, well, there's books on it, the body keeps score. The body keeps score of trauma. But when what you're talking about there is you're reliving it. It's so true. You know, if we have a traumatic experience, someone that we love passes, you know, or we have an event happen in our life, but then it's kind of done and over. What you're saying is physically, because the mind-body connection and the emotions and everything is completely holistic, our emotions are causing those physical responses and vice versa, isn't it? It's just this loop going on and on and on.
And I'm going to show you exactly where that shows up the most. But just to wrap it up on the study, think about it. Those numbers were super high. This is what's even crazier. Those numbers aren't necessarily from a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the boyfriend or girlfriend who broke your heart in high school. So think about this. That person may not know, care, remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are today, medicating and suppressing those symptoms because of something that happened decades ago. The good news is you can heal from all of it. And that was the third discovery. Want me to get into that one?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the good news. This is the good news.
This is the good news. This was the most exciting for me out of the discoveries. And what we learned was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, like I just shared, to this completely rebuilt place called post-betrayal transformation, we're going to move through 5 proven, predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every single stage. And we know what you need to do to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. Happy to share the stages if you want to hear them.
Do it.
Okay. So it's all what our coaches are certified in. It's all we do within the PBT Institute. I'm going to give you a boiled down version. So stage 1, this is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing. We're so good at that, right? And ignoring or neglecting the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. Well, if a table only has 2 legs, it's easy for that table to topple over, right? That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. The scariest of all of the stages. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Everybody remembers their D-Day.
I just got shivers.
You know exactly where you were. And here was a psychological earthquake. Life is now compartmentalized into before it happened and after it happened, right?
Yeah.
Right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're now headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You can't wrap your mind and understand what just happened. You cannot wrap your mind around it. It makes no sense. It's like a weird slow motion thing going on.
Absolutely.
And your worldview, right, has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern us, that prevent chaos. Trust this person, don't go there. These are the rules, right? And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, your moment of discovery, every single rule you've been holding to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is terrifying, right? But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive. That's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Here's the trap, though. Stage 3, by far, hands down, is the most common place we get stuck. Claire, I would venture to say 90% of your clients are in stage 3.
Mhm.
Here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where we just came from, we think it's good. We're like, whew. And because we don't
Totally
know,
resonates.
yeah. And think about it. Because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we park here, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. 4 things happen right here. The first thing is you start getting all those small self benefits. You get to be right. You get someone to blame. You get your story. We love our story. You get sympathy, right? You get sympathy from everyone you tell your story to. And because you're not feeling like you're getting much else, you take it. You feel like that's good. So you plant deeper roots. Now, because this is where you are, well, now the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. And you start questioning yourself. So you plant deeper roots. Now that these are the thoughts you're thinking, well, this is the energy you start putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now you start attracting people and circumstances and even relationships to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Like, here's where you're going to join that lame support group and you're going to sabotage your healing because you found your people. Here's where you're healing and you're going to sabotage your healing because you're afraid to outgrow your betrayer. Do you see?
Yes.
It gets worse, but I'll get you. Because it feels so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go, right here is where we start numbing, avoiding, and distracting. So we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, anything to keep us busy, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from this painful place. So think about it. We do it for a day, a week, a month now.
I spent years there. I spent years. I spent
Exactly.
years there.
20 years. I mean, I can see someone 20 years out and say that emotional eating you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. And they would say it happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
All they did was lock themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
Normalize it, right? That's just normal. This is my normal world now. And like you said, this feels better than the other stage, which was shock, horror. The bottom just fell out of my world.
Right. Exactly. So they're thinking this is as good as it's going to get. I better find a way to be okay with it. And then the people they meet, the places they go, the relationships they have, everything is a stage 3 life. It stinks. And here's also where they start, you're getting all those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. Like here's the stress right in the middle. And then because of it, the weight issues, the sleep issues, the hormonal issues, the adrenal issues, and we start medicating and suppressing everything else and never get to the root of the problem, which is the betrayal.
Yes.
Right? But think about it. If you are willing, and willingness is a big word right here, if you are willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, a bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff's not there. It's not cozy yet, but you're like, okay, we can do this. We got this. It feels like that. Now, here's what's so interesting. If you were to move, think about it. You don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that you've outgrown that don't represent who you want to be in your new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, you've outgrown them right here. You don't take them with you. That lame support group, you're done. That betrayer who's not changing, you're done. Very common to change relationships as we move into stage 4. And it was this one place moving from stage 3 to stage 4 that I would see that. Anyway, when we've settled into this new space, we've made it cozy, we've made it mentally home, we move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal, self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We couldn't do that earlier. We were surviving. Now we can. We have a new worldview based on everything we see so clearly. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
I love everything you have just said, Debbie, and all of it. My goodness, I'm kind of blown away because I think I did get stuck in stage 3 for a really long time, a really, really long time. And that was from certain betrayals that happened when I was crazy, isn't it? It's like 18 years old. And you understand that you put your barriers up. You find the comfort. Having been so uncomfortable, you find comfort in your story, in having normality. At that point, you just want normality, don't you? And then you don't realize that all these behaviors that start coming out of that. So for me, it's striving, like striving to prove myself. I've got to prove myself because I'm not enough, because that's one of the beliefs that comes out of the betrayal. I'm not enough. There's something wrong with me. So I have to prove myself. And what you're speaking of there is so beautiful. And I think healing comes in stages, doesn't it, with different things. And I think for me, I've shared this story quite a lot recently. I had burnout at the beginning of the year, genuinely, because I still hadn't done the other, probably the other stages. And that leg, the spiritual leg, the emotional leg was coming back. That was kind of growing in the table, but the spiritual leg had just fallen away. And I was not investing at all in my faith, in my sense of my connection to whatever we want to call it, God, source, so that there's a sense of peace that we can't find outside of ourselves. We can't fill that void with all our addictions and the striving and all of this kind of stuff. It's that spiritual leg has to start becoming more solid. And from that point, then we can move into healing and more self-love.
Exactly.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
And it's so interesting that you bring up spirituality, because that had such a pivotal role in healing. What I saw with my study participants, me too, it was some of them abandoned religion completely. They felt it wasn't supporting them, moved out of religion completely and became spiritual. Some moved towards the spiritual side of their religion. Some weren't really practicing anything and became very spiritual. And I was wondering why that's happening. Actually, 2 reasons. One is we feel so completely disconnected. We want to feel a sense of connectedness. And the second reason, this makes so much sense. Think about it. When the person we trust the most proves untrustworthy, who do we trust? Because we say, well, I can't trust that person. And now, oh my gosh, I can't even trust myself. How did I not see? How did I not know? So if I don't trust the person I trusted the most, and I can't even trust myself, how can I trust in anyone else? You see? So the move towards spirituality was our way of learning to trust in something other than us.
Yes. And realizing that the truth and the nugget is that there are some things we can control, our response to things, our taking responsibility for our life, but there are many things outside of our control. And there's an element of, okay, I can sink or swim here. And there's this big old obstacle in my life right now, but what's the opportunity? What's it helping me become? What am I learning about myself here? And I think that is a very spiritual process. I really do.
It is. And those are more along the lines of stage 4 questions, because you're looking at the opportunity, in the experience, saying, what can I do with it. And here's the thing, like the worst of it happened already. You owe it to yourself to, to experience the version of you waiting on the other side, waiting in stage 4 and stage 5. Like I will tell you, every single day within the PBT Institute, we see stage 4, stage 5 members. And that's where you have new levels of health, new passion projects, new businesses like the PBT. That was a stage 5 thing. New relationships, either with the person who hurt you in a very different way or with someone new. You can't access any of that when you're deep in your trauma. You just can't do it. And just to close the loop on my story, healing and rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move along. That's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as to completely transform people, we married each other again. New rings.
You didn't.
New house,
That's
new dress, and our 4 kids is our bridal party. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It also has the opportunity to wake them up to who they temporarily became. You still don't have to do anything with that. But when that person is as shocked and blindsided almost by their behavior as the betrayed is, there could be, and we see it every day within the PBT Institute, potential for a new improved 2.0 version of that relationship. And so, I could tell you, we're having more fun now than we ever have. And I've known him since 1984.
That's so amazing, Debbie. I did not know that about your story.
And I've, like I said, I've been through death of a loved one. I've been through disease. Nothing for me has been as hard as that. It's a full-on reckoning. You are taking on every aspect of yourself. You're taking on your ego, your pride, your all of it. You're questioning everything. And you're just, it's such a different experience. But we teach, how do you know if it's safe and in your best interest to just heal yourself and move along, or heal and rebuild? There's an absolute way of knowing.
I was going to ask that because, like what you just said, that really hit something in me, because I put my hand up and say, that I have betrayed, I have betrayed someone before in my past. And, you saying about it becoming, it's a shock to that person, like that behavior was a shock to me. And I've gone through a lot of healing around why I did that. And it will never make that behavior okay. But understanding it and bringing compassion to it and me forgiving myself for it has been a massive part of my healing. So one of the things I noticed on your website was that you do actually work. There's a program for people that are the betrayer. And I just found that so fascinating. I found it so balanced of you, Debbie, to actually, and now I understand why, because you've been through that and had this huge transformation for the both of you.
Yeah.
So the fact that you look at it in a very balanced way is really beautiful and very admirable.
Oh, thank you. Well, keep in mind, it's only going to be a certain type of betrayer that's even interested in a program like that, right? Because if there's no remorse, regret, taking responsibility, you have nothing to work with there, right? So you heal yourself and move on. But actually, I have they do phenomenally well, and very often the betrayed will go into our reclaim program, the betrayer will go into our rebuild program, and they emerge as 2 very different people, sort of like my experience with my husband. And but what we see, and I have a call with them every month, and they work with our coaches. They have their own community, but I give them the exact playbook. Say this, do this, don't ever say that, don't ever do that. And they are so ready and willing to just become someone they're proud of. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. Even just yesterday, we had a call, and there was the betrayer. And of course, it was a call for the betrayers. And he said, well, it's really hard for me. And I was like, no. Your partner needs to know there's not a cell of you left over from that version of you. So here's such a beautiful opportunity to say and do things that are hard for you. Yes. Because this way she can say, oh, wow, the older version of him never said or did that. You see? So when he was saying, well, it's hard for me to be demonstrative. It's hard for me to, just talk about my feelings. And I said, perfect. Then you just, it doesn't matter if you stumble. It doesn't matter how awkward it is. You just become and you start, because it'll register. Things like that. So
but then that's, through hardship, we transform, right? So it's got to be hard. It's got to be hard. So we've covered so much ground there, Debbie. I just absolutely love it. I'm just looking at some of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm thinking, I feel like we've kind of covered so much of what I wanted to ask you. One of the things I would say is, where would you start if someone's listening to this and there is like a gut punch? This podcast episode, it's like a gut punch, and it's kind of like, okay, I have just been betrayed. Like, what would you say to them about the steps that they would need and should really be taking in order to start this transformation process that you've so eloquently taken us through? What would you want to say to that person that's listening to this?
The first thing I'd want to say is, I get it. I understand. It's one of the most painful of the human experiences. And I understand how much it hurts. I understand you never saw this coming. I understand this was the person that you trusted 100%. Having said that, I know that if you're in stage 2 and stage 3, I also know how painful that is. And I know how good stage 4 and 5 feels. You owe it to yourself to move slowly, whatever pace works for you, predictably through the 5 stages. Remember, I'm not winging it here. This is what the research proved. This is all we do all day long. There's a roadmap. You can heal from all of it. Staying stuck has become a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would happen if you've got someone that, what would you actually say on the flip side of this? I'm kind of winging it here with this question. Going back to the betrayer, what would you say if they're kind of sitting there and they've got a lot of shame? Because here's the thing, on the other side of that, we've got the shame, the shock and the shame. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. Where would you should suggest that they start on the process of healing themselves, of really transforming into a new version of themselves that doesn't do that in the future, with the hope, I mean, it would only be a hope, that the person they betrayed would somehow understand and reconcile? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring that up, because that was actually one of our other members, his exact question. He said, I'm filled with so much shame. I'm like paralyzed. And this is exactly what I said to him. Your shame isn't doing anything for you or your partner. Yeah. How do you heal shame? You bring light to it. You bring honor to it. Move it to the next level where that shame, you put some action behind it, whether it means you're taking responsibility, you're paying it forward in some way, you're doing something to move that. Because first of all, shame is the most debilitating, physically debilitating emotion we have. What it does to your body and mind is horrific. Yes. So I even said, and this is exactly what I said to me, if your shame was doing something for you, I'd say that's great. It's not doing one thing for you. So you have, it's about working towards self-forgiveness, but I get it. You may not be there yet because you haven't done whatever it takes to right the wrong with your partner. And if that's not an opportunity, in paying it forward. Like, for example, I remember my husband speaking to all the guys in his office saying, don't screw up your life. Don't do this. Don't, so it's in whatever way you're able to manage your shame. Don't stay with that. That's not helping you or anyone else.
It's a really, really helpful thing I'm sure, for people to hear. Listen, Debbie, it's been so incredible to talk to you about all of this. And I know that even if someone feels like they might have moved through betrayal, that they might feel that they're in stage 5, I hope as many people are listening to this, but I can imagine this is resonating for so many people, because they might realize, like I have very recently, that I probably got stuck in stage 3, for example, for a very, very long time. And so I feel like this is such a beautiful conversation, such an enlightening conversation, and one that helps people bring compassion to where they're at and understanding, because that's what you're doing. It's helping people understand, oh, right, this is what's going on. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm feeling this. And that's, it's really incredible to bring some wholeness back to people, because like you said, we can really disconnect. Like in stage 3, we can very disconnect from ourselves, right? Like trauma, we leave pieces of ourselves, don't we? I always we have to go back and almost like reclaim those pieces of ourselves that are left in the trauma.
Not even reclaim. You get to build a version of you so strong, so healthy, so healed, so whole, so confident, that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to have the experience not happen. That's trauma well served.
Amen to that. Like it's like what we're saying. It's an opportunity to move into the versions of ourselves that I feel are the lightest versions of ourselves. I look back at all of my experiences and think, hurrah, I am glad that they've happened. At the time, I think to myself, why is this happening to me again? Why is it going on again and again? But, they have all served me on a deep level, and I'm going through a whole nother period of that transformation now. And so that's why I'm honored that I get to share these experiences with wonderful people like you, because I learn so much on all of these podcasts as well. I have the opportunity to speak to so many amazing people and people like you. So thank you, Debi, for sharing all of this. And what I'd love you to share now as we wrap up is how can people find out about you, Debi, and potentially, work with you, come on one of your programs? How can they find you?
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. Everything is at the PBT, as in Post Betrayal Transformation, thepbtinstitute.com.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Debi. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under The Midlife Mentors. Yeah.